Good morning, Terry.
Good morning.
Malcolm is going to present first, and then Joshua, and then you can share your screen after Joshua.
Perfect. I'm logging on now from my phone, and I'll go and log on from my computer here in just a second.
Okay, thank you. Scott, we're just waiting for the mayor.
Okay.
Unless you want Joe to start. There he is. He's there. Just a moment. Mayor, we're all ready to go. And Malcolm is the first presenter with the screen that is on right now. That is the topic.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our workshop this morning, December 21st, the longest night of the year. Let's jump right in, and Malcolm, we'll turn it over to you and start about an incentivized employee community engagement.
Thank you, Mayor. And I jumped ahead of the screen. But good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. Malcolm Hankins, Des Moines Assistant City Manager. First, thanks for the opportunity to present a plan to incentivize employee community engagement. This is a plan that you asked the City Manager to bring back to you for review. So as a framework for this morning's conversation, I'll start with a brief background. I'll move to the program objectives, and then I'll get into some of the key elements of the program. And finally, I'll discuss next steps. This won't necessarily be a lengthy presentation, so I do invite you to ask any questions you have or offer any thoughts at any point during the conversation. I'll also note that members of the Civil and Human Rights Commission have been invited to this meeting, and if any are joining us, I hope that they would be available to comment as well. So this is not the first or new discussion. This is not a new discussion for Des Moines. The City of Des Moines employees have expressed interest in employee paid volunteer time. You'll hear me use that term, volunteer time off, because that's somewhat what this program essentially is. But the volunteer timeout programs are opportunities to enhance employee engagement, promote workplace morale, and to encourage employee connections in the community. The Des Moines Civil and Human Rights Commission also recommended the incentivized community engagement among their Bridging the Gap initiative. I think commissioners, when they were discussing this at the joint meeting, mentioned terms like connecting, sharing and building mutual understanding with the community. They also use the term ambassadors for the city, which I believe the mayor also related in his comments. And finally, the Moines City Council supported the commission's recommendations and offered similar desired outcomes. And as I said earlier, you direct the city manager to develop a plan for your review. So based on these prior conversations and the feedback, we felt like we had a good sense of forming a plan for your consideration, starting with some clear objectives. So we identified strengthening employee relationships with City of Des Moines residents and creating a communication channel between city employees and community members as core objectives. These objectives seem to align with the employee and the Civil and Human Rights Commission goals and council interests. So these are high-level objectives, but we realize that they encompass other operational benefits like those related to employee workplace engagement and job satisfaction. So as we continue to look at the plan, we felt it was important to look at what we're currently trying to achieve in the city as a whole. So what's our mission? The Volunteer Time Off program aligns with the city's mission to be financially strong, provide exceptional municipal services in a customer-friendly manner with an involved community. So this plan or program effectively affirms our commitment to our mission, but also messages that commitment publicly. So we felt the Volunteer Time Off program was essentially a way to make the mission active, so to activate the mission. So if it's our mission to, for example, have an involved community, let's encourage employees to be involved in the community. So this is not to suggest, I'll say this here, this is not to suggest that employees are not already volunteering. I believe this is already happening to some degree at varying degrees. But this program affirms the organization's commitment and encouragement of staff's volunteer service in the community. So I also think it's important and helpful to place public servants in positions where we have opportunities to connect, to be experienced by the community beyond our official government positions. And so I think this points back also to the commission's goal, the Civil and Human Rights Commission goal of being able to build trust and mutual understanding. And again, that language that was used, the hope of building community ambassadors. So when we talk about trust, I think it's hard, if not impossible, for people who have differences to build trust or to resolve those differences if those groups don't come together. So the Volunteer Time Off program encourages these engagements to happen. So with that background and mission in mind, here's a look at some of the key program elements. The program applies to all regular full-time, non-probationary employees. It allows 8 paid volunteer hours annually that can be used in at least 1-hour increments. Of course, this is not a required program, so employees are encouraged but not obligated to participate in this program. As for volunteer opportunities, we wanted the program to be flexible. So some of the programs we found restricted volunteering to themes or focus areas. But we felt it was important to provide a framework for employees not to be overly restrictive in the volunteer options, but to just give them the framework to use in making choices about how to benefit the community. So paid volunteer activities can support organizations that are charity or not-for-profit or tax exempt. Of course, there are some natural appropriate limitations. So city paid volunteer time cannot support political causes. candidates for political offices, or explicitly religious activities. And for that purpose, it mirrors the language that you'll find with other federal funding restrictions, or organizations that discriminate. And then finally, the program is limited to the Des Moines city limits. And so this keeps with the objective that we stated earlier, to build ambassadors in the community, strengthen relationships, and build trust between Des Moines employees and Des Moines community members. So as policy, our plan was discussed, we want to acknowledge that there are opportunities in Des Moines for folks to volunteer. So this page that I'm showing right now is, it comes from the Greater Des Moines Partnership website. And their site lists several organizations seeking volunteers and tools to search for volunteer opportunities. They're not the only site that has that. So the United Way of Central Iowa also provides a tool for those interested in volunteering to find the opportunity that fits their interests. So, I didn't put a slide at this point, but there are also several internal city volunteer opportunities that this program would not prevent. So you would be able to volunteer within the city if you had interests in departments within the city and programs, et cetera. So as programs go, one of the things that we want to do is be able to measure the effectiveness of the program. And so, some common or, very common key performance measures that we found were universal are already out there. The ones on the screen that I'm showing you right now came from the volunteermatch.org website. So, like I said, a number of agencies or programs have these criteria: number of volunteers recruited, hours worked per volunteer, estimated dollar values of hours donated, and services delivered. Now, we have other considerations, including things like the number of agencies benefited in Des Moines, if possible, the number of residents touched or impacted or served. But ultimately, we know that volunteering success is much more than these numbers. So we expect that our means of evaluating this plan and program will evolve. But we also, we hope to have some qualitative data measures to go alongside these quantitative measures. So where do we go next? So recently, our human resources director has contacted employee group representatives and notified them of the final proposed program. We've had ongoing conversations, but we were able to give them a written document that showed what we were trying to do and asked for their feedback. So we're awaiting that feedback. We've also been working on the internal processes for administration. So there's some behind the scenes work that has to be done, but it's not going to be started. We've already been doing it. So the availability, for example, of pay codes for staff to select volunteer paid time off, the forms used for submitting requests, things of that nature have already been in the formative stages. So we hope to finalize those in the first quarter of next year. We've also begun to work with city communications. We have a draft FAQ in place. We'll finalize that, and it'll help to share with employees the program benefits, the rules, responsibilities, and answer some of the common questions that are out there. And then as the program unfolds, we will look to interested staff, the groups who've been working on this and have an interest, to provide input on the finer details. We envision things like future goal setting, rollout strategies, and program promotion. We also want to come back to council with an annual report of the volunteer efforts as we start to capture that data. We hope to promote the program as part of the city's values and incorporate benefits into the overall compensation messaging. So imagine candidates for jobs We hope to give those individuals a peek into the values of the city so that the potential workplace folks or people that would take a job here at the city would understand that this is an incentive or a benefit that's offered. So again, with that, I'll open it up to questions from Mayor and Council, or if the Mayor would like, if Civil and Human Rights Commissioners are on the line, if there are any comments from that group.
Any comments or questions? Commissioners? Can we open it up to Emily? Looks like Emily's hands up.
Yeah,
Emily?
hello. Hi.
There you go.
I don't have much comment than to say thank you. This clearly follows best practice, and I think will be a wonderful program for the city.
Thank you, Emily. All right, anybody else?
Mayor, this is Linda. I just want to say, Kay, I'm still getting texts from people who are trying to get into the meeting and cannot get in. And they're telling me that the 800 number's not working. So I just want you to be aware of that.
Thank you.
All right. Scott or Malcolm, unless there's anything else, let's move on to our Ladder Up grant program.
Morning. Wait, our boss has his hand up. Good morning, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, Joshua V. Barr, Director of the Des Moines Civil and Human Rights Commission. Today I'm here to just give an update on the Ladder Up program, which is part of our Plan DSM social equity efforts in order to increase opportunities for residents living here in the city of Des Moines, increasing their ability to grow economically and contribute back to the city. So
excuse me, Joshua. This is Carl Voss. If people can't get in, should we be pausing here to see what the
Carl, they are able to get in. The 800 number isn't working. If people want to use the regular untoll-free number, there is a regular number. So we have 12 attendees, and we also are live streaming it on YouTube. So if anybody wants to go to YouTube, they can view it there.
Okay, we're okay then.
We're okay. We're completely live, so
Okay.
we're fine.
And Kay, that's fine. But how are people supposed to know this?
We'll try to get, I'll let PIO know, and they'll get a release out.
I mean, instead of having people text us, there should be a way that they can call the city and say, hey, I can't get on.
Well, they can. All of our information is available on the website, and then also both numbers are posted with the Zoom, so they can try either number. And I realize if somebody has a landline, that's not the most advantageous way to do it, but that's, both numbers are posted and are available, and we do have attendees, and it is being live streamed.
All right, Joshua.
okay. So with the Ladder Up program, just an overview of what I'll be talking about today. This is actually just an update of what we discussed last month at the City Council workshop update, quarterly workshop. So this is actually a brief presentation, not very long, but I will go and give some additional detail from the quarterly meeting that we had in November. So we'll kind of talk about the objectives of Bridging the Gap, give a background of why we're doing this, talk about some key policy elements, and we can certainly add more if you have any questions, and then we'll move to next steps. So what are the objectives of Ladder Up? So one of the things that we discussed during Bridging the Gap at the community dialogues was there were a number of communities, although initially the discussion was about safety and justice, the conversation expanded into economic opportunity and investment into neighborhoods. So with Ladder Up, it's really just showing that the city, we want to see the community improve economically. We want to see economic advancement. So this grant program is designed to help improve opportunities for marginalized communities and neighborhoods, with the bonus in regards to the city of boosting the tax base. So this was initially birthed with the 2018 community dialogues that we started, and it expanded into the Bridging the Gap initiative, where we went out and engaged with hundreds of community members about what issues are important to them. Those included community reveals, where we revealed 9 concepts, and one of those being Ladder Up, where people could go out and vote on the things that they thought were important to them. And economic opportunity was the second most important item, with housing opportunities being number 1, and it was very close. So with that, we were able to take Ladder Up, which was, again, a concept dedicated to creating economic opportunities for people to move up the socioeconomic ladder and improve our tax base. So we had a number of discussions about potential ideas with city administration and other entities. And we wanted some ideas that were initially thrown out were community development, collaborating with local organizations to teach residents the process and requirements of getting a business started. Also collaboration on upskilling programs to expand opportunities to all residents. During that discussion, we did discover that there were a number of organizations already doing this work. So the discussion then transformed to what can we do to bolster this information and assist those communities in doing more outreach. And that's how we came to the grant program, where the grant program was to allocate and disperse $100,000 from the city's local option sales tax budget to community organizations to provide for and expand on upskilling programs and business startup support. And we did that, and the hope of that was that we increase the city's contribution to the local economy and strengthen local purchasing power by giving community members opportunities to work with and get training from these local organizations for upskilling programs, or you're training people on moving them from low-end jobs to mid-level jobs. Also, where we are helping people get businesses started, because one of the biggest ways to build wealth is to essentially work for yourself and establish your own business rather than essentially collecting a paycheck. So the grant program was birthed so people could have the opportunity, so we could assist these organizations and reaching out to these community members and bringing more people in for these training programs. When we're talking about organizations, we're talking about organizations such as the Evelyn K. Davis Center and Urban Dreams, and programs that may be offered by other organizations that work with certain refugee and immigrant groups. So we really want to help support the organizations that are already doing this work. So that being said, some of the key policy elements for the grant program. Number one, it's only available to 501c3 organizations or organizations that have a proxy that is able to receive that funding for them. And in addition to being a 501c3 or nonprofit, they must also work to address inequities and increase economic opportunities for marginalized, underserved communities here in the Des Moines area. So the opportunities that come from this grant, number one, although it's a $100,000 grant, it will be given to at least 2 organizations, because organizations can apply for and receive anywhere from $500,000 to $50,000 from the grant program. So it's at least 2 organizations that will receive the funding, but it could be more than that depending on what they ask for and what we deem that will be given through the process. Limitations. Funding will be released in 6-month increments, and we do that because we just don't want to give a blank check. We essentially want to see the work that's done. They have to report back before they are given the second half of their funding. And no organization can receive funding 3 years in a row. So essentially you receive it 2 years and then you have to take a gap year before you can reapply or eligible to be reconsidered. And that way you want to limit dependency, where organizations are really trying to expand the program and trying to find other levels or new levels of funding where they won't have to be solely dependent on city funding. Location, the organization must be based in the Des Moines area, and again, work to address inequities that affect communities here in the city of Des Moines. So some of the next steps, right now, we've already created the RFI, and legal is currently reviewing the program, and we hope to hear from them soon. We've already had at least one conversation about it. Once we get the go-ahead, the application will be released in January, unless there's some issue that we're unaware of, and it will be open for 5 weeks for organizations to apply. Initial applications will be reviewed by the internal committee of the commission and a few staff members and scored. And from that scoring rubric, we'll be able to identify the finalists. And the finalists will present before the commission, and the commission will vote on the final grant recipients. And
Joshua?
Yes.
Let me interrupt you just for a second. Evidently, people are trying to use the regular council session Zoom information is why they are not getting in. Please tell them to go to the work session and they will be able to get in. There is no problem with the Zoom link. So please let them know they're trying to access the wrong meeting. Thank you.
Once those finalists are selected, then the program will be administrated by the commission, and the funding will again be given out over a year, but 6 months at a time. And persons who are selected will have to report back midway a final, and we'll submit a report to the public and to City Council for review. So we already have a logo, and that completes it. Again, right now it's presently in review by legal. Once that is done, we'll move forward with the application process and open up for questions.
Anybody have any questions? Council? Connie?
Joshua, so then the commission will be setting the criteria on reviews and set the goals that you want to accomplish by what the participants have said they would be able to do?
Yes, that is in the RFI, some of the expectations and the questions. It's probably about a 30 questionnaire RFI. So there are some things, and my hope just personally that the first group is a group that hits it out the park and is really able to demonstrate what inequities they're trying to address and how this grant funding will assist in that.
And then the commission will monitor all of that for us and then report.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thanks, Connie. Anybody else? Joshua, any other comments?
Commissioner Shields may want to say something. I don't know.
Emily, any thoughts?
Oh, yep. Hi. Sorry. Just figuring out how to get unmuted. This has been a long time in the making, and I do think it has strong potential to build some future partnerships with community organizations. And really, as Joshua outlined, add value and enhance great work that's already happening to ensure that we can reach more of our community with some of these programs. So we are excited to see where that goes and the applications we get. Would ask all of you to, as we roll out the application, promote it with the great organizations that you are connected with, and we'll be reporting back on the success. Thank you so much.
All right, Emily and Joshua, thank you very much. Let's move on to the One Economy Action Plan.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Terry Caldwell Johnson, and joining me this morning is Deidre DeGier. We are representing the Directors Council, who are the authors of the One Economy Report and Initiative. Deidre will share her screen and will
just get permission to share my screen. I will pull up the presentation. Good morning to everyone.
You should be able to do that, Deidre.
Thank you.
All right, here we go.
All right. Terry, are you there? It looks like Terry might be experiencing some technical difficulties.
Deidre, can you maybe start the presentation?
I sure
Hopefully
can.
Terry can.
I sure can, Mr. Mayor. So the One Economy Report, just to give you an outline on what we're going to talk about today, we'll give you some questions to ponder. We'll talk about the Tale of Two Cities, which really simply just outlines the disparities that we see existing. We'll go a little bit deeper into those disparities and talk to you a little bit about some of the high level data points that exist in the report, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Questions to ponder during this presentation: why is information critical to the discussion of to the Des Moines City Council? Why is this a critical conversation? What does the data reveal about our city? We also want you to think about what data points have caught you by surprise. And then what policies, operational plans, or budgets, what type of decisions can come from just the revelation of the data that we share with you today. Giving you just a little bit of an overview of what this report means and where it has come from. This has been a 6-year effort funded by the Northwest Area Foundation. There were 5 cities who were a part of this study: Des Moines, Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, and the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Each city decided to use Northwest area funding in their own specific way. In the city of Des Moines, what we thought was really important was to capture data that helped us better understand the anecdotal stories that we were hearing throughout the community by so many African Americans. And so this report not only quantifies the disparities that exist amongst African Americans, but it also qualifies with their experiences as well, because along with the data, a number of focus groups occurred to ensure that we not only saw the data in its numerical format, but we saw the data live and in color through their personal experiences. Give you an idea of what Black Polk County looks like, what Black Iowa looks like. African Americans and Africans are 4% of the total population in the state. African Americans and Africans are about 7.1% of the population in Polk County, making up about 11% of the total population in Des Moines, making it the highest proportion of African Americans and Africans in any city or town throughout the entire state. Now, if we want to break up Polk County, we see about 4.6% of Blacks in West Des Moines, 2.8 in Johnston, 1.6 in Ankeny, and 1.2 in Waukee. And as many of you all know, we are seeing tremendous growth in the African American population throughout our suburbs. This is the urban core. This was, where much of this report focuses its attention on. When we first sought out to overcome some of the challenges that we saw existing economically in the community, it was through the Des Moines urban core that our attention was focused on. And so you all know very well about the urban core, 10 neighborhoods, more than 35,000 individuals, and one of the more diverse sectors of our entire state right here in the city of Des Moines. Terry, are you back? All right, I'll keep going. And let's talk a little bit about the tale of two cities. Now, sometimes people look at this comparison and they take a step back, they put up their defenses. But I want you to know that we're only sharing this story just to reveal to you where there is room for growth, where there are opportunities for us to overcome some of the challenges and help overcome some of the challenges that we see so many African Americans have to go through. So when we look at Greater Des Moines, there is a lot to brag about in our city. 11th best place to live in the city is in Des Moines. That was in 2016. The second best city to find a job in 2015, and the number one city for a millennial to buy a home in 2015, and the 5th best place in the country for retirement in 2015. That was where we started. That was where we started, but we could not figure out how we grapple with that other side of the story. And that other side of the story being, at that time, 3rd worst city in the United States for African Americans, 16.7% unemployment rate compared to the 2nd best city to find a job. We also saw 1.4% of all home mortgages were made to African Americans between 2010 and 2014. However, best place for a millennial to buy a home. And then we saw less than 11% of Black households in Polk County with retirement income. So that is what our starting point was as it related to the accolades that we received. And then here's the other side of the story that we specifically aligned with data that was most recent. 3rd best city to live in the US in 2019, compared to 53% of African Americans in Polk County cost burden renters, meaning they're spending 30% or more on their income towards rent, compared to about 40% of our entire population. We'll talk a little bit more about that. 7th
by virtue of that, we believe that the unemployment rates still continue to be significantly higher for individuals of African descent.
All right, I'm going to continue going, but I'll text Terry to let her know that we're having some problems hearing her on her end. 7th best. Terry, can you hear us? We apologize, folks. She's steaming right through this report.
Yeah, Deidre, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay.
And while the graduation rate or the high school, can you hear?
Terry,
you're
we're having
breaking
some
up.
problems hearing you. You're breaking up. We just actually started hearing your voice about 30 seconds ago.
Oh, okay. I'm going to let you go ahead. Can you hear me better now?
Oh,
Yes.
that's perfect.
Oh, okay. Well, Deidre, I'll let you go ahead with the data and then I'll come back. How's that?
That sounds good. All right, we're at 7th best place to live. And then the unemployment rate, obviously this unemployment rate no longer is the case due to COVID. And so we understand that unemployment numbers.
Now, Deidre, I think you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, Deidre, you're breaking up a little bit now. Terry, you're coming through pretty clear.
Okay. All right. So, Deidre, I think you're breaking up. I think they can hear me. So I'm going to, let's go to the next slide, which is our data slide. Deidre?
I'm moving the slides, but are you having challenges seeing them?
I can hear you now. We can hear you loud and clear now.
Can you see me move the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So at any point in which I break up, just go ahead and take over.
Okay, sounds good.
So I'm just going to go through a few of these sections of the blueprint. I'll put the blueprint and the actual report into the chat, but just to give you an idea, the report was done in 2017 and we saw the data live and in color. That data was not enough. We needed to figure out, okay, how do we resolve specific data points in this report? And so therein lies the opportunity to build a blueprint. And so a number of individuals got together and were part of these specific work groups. They're experts in their field, their experience, and they chose data points that they felt like they could move the needle on, or perhaps they were doing it in their own place of business or in their own nonprofit, and were able to incorporate some of those best practices into this blueprint. And so what we saw as it related to financial inclusion, the indicators that this group looked at were the unbanked and underbanked numbers of Blacks, the loan approval rates, and the number of small businesses that existed. What you'll see on the left in the teal is the most recent data that we have. What you'll see on the right is in the orange is the 2017 data. While you may see some improvements or you may see some setbacks from year to year, what I really want you to pay attention to are the disparities that exist within that year. That is where our room for improvement and our room for growth exists. And so when we look at the Black Des Moines residents unbanked numbers, 22.1% of Blacks in Des Moines are unbanked compared to 3% in the state. Underbanked numbers, meaning perhaps they have a checking account, perhaps they have a savings account. They definitely don't have any lines of credit. They don't have any other types of loans or products that financial institution offers. They're using payday lending, they're using pay cards. That's 31.8% of Black Des Moines residents are underbanked compared to 13.5% statewide. So you see over 50% of African Americans lacking a relationship with the financial institution. We know that a relationship with the financial institution gets an individual farther along the trajectory to financial sustainability. So again, an opportunity for growth there with unbanked and underbanked numbers. What we also saw as it related to financial institutions was that African Americans were 2.2 times more likely to get denied for a loan. If you remember at the beginning of COVID, there were a number of people that were getting home equity lines of credit. They were getting lines of credit in general. They were refinancing their home because there was a lot of uncertainty. People needed liquidity to respond. As you can see, African Americans were 2.2 times more likely to get denied for those specific types of products. Poses a challenge as it relates to financial sustainability. Then we look at the wages. We look at the median income for a household in Polk County. What we saw here was that African Americans were making $33,816 compared to all of Polk County, which encompasses those relatively low numbers in household income for African Americans. $63,530 going into most households throughout the city of Des Moines. And so we see, or throughout Polk County. And so we see basically a $30,000 difference between all of Polk County's median household income and Black Polk County. We all know what we could do with $30,000 right now. And so therein lies room for opportunity there. And then we look at key findings as it relates to small businesses. This is something that Joshua Barr mentioned earlier as it related to having your own income. When we first started on this project at the bottom, there were only 23 Black-owned small businesses in Polk County. And I know that you all know as a council, the businesses that exist in our community, the Black businesses that exist in our community, the barbershops, the beauty shops, the nail salons, there's more than 23 of those. And we were only able to identify 9 female small businesses. And so therein lied some opportunity. And so when you look at the 2020 numbers, which were on the top, those numbers increased astronomically, and they're continuing to increase because we are identifying those small businesses. We are getting them registered. We are making sure that they're targeted small businesses and things along those lines. But there was just not as much investment going into small businesses, still opportunity for growth there. The city of Des Moines was stepped up to the plate at the beginning of this COVID season and said, we're gonna help fund some of these small businesses that have lack of resources, that have lack of relationships with financial institutions. And there's a lot more work that can be done there. But that's just a start to let you know some of the things that these small businesses need because they're starting from behind the finish line, to be honest. The other indicator that we looked at was employment. Obviously, the labor participation rate for Blacks and the unemployment rate was the biggest thing that this work group saw that they could look after and place some best practices to improve unemployment. Again, these numbers are not as they exist right now. These are pre-COVID numbers. Statewide unemployment for Blacks, 10.3%. compared to 2.8% throughout the state at the time that this data was captured. In Polk County, 10.5% for Black unemployment rate compared to 2.7% countywide. I also want to draw your attention to this middle graphic, which really outlines Blacks that are in the labor force, because there are some questions of, are Blacks actively seeking employment? Is this something that they're interested in doing? And these numbers are relatively consistent with the entire city. And so that really shares to us that not only are these people looking for work, but to get to the type of work they're trying to accomplish, they're $30,000 in the hole compared to their peers throughout the county. And then the other thing that I want to draw your attention to is job availability. We promote in our community, live, work, and play in your own community. And this number really shows that in the city of Des Moines, we're at a deficit for job availability in high poverty areas. And so when we're promoting live, work, and play, it's important for us to identify that that is not available to so many of our city of Des Moines residents compared to the suburbs where we see a surplus in job availability in those communities. Then we look at educational attainment. The purple that you'll notice is the urban core numbers. The green, the almost teal is the Polk County numbers. And then the Kermit green, if you will, is Des Moines and West Des Moines metro numbers. And when you look at the urban core, again, this is the cornerstone of so much of this research, is to help resolve the challenges that we see existing in the urban core. You'll notice that there are some obvious disparities as it relates to dropout rates and folks getting a high school diploma or an equivalency. And then when you look at associate degrees and bachelor degrees, there's a great deal of work that can be done to resolve those disparities too. But that is what it looks like as it relates to urban core educational attainment. And then the other indicator that I want to talk to you about today is housing. Home ownership is a traditional means of transferring wealth and building wealth. And it just gives you flexibility in so many situations. We talked about those home equity lines of credit. We talked about those cost savings that related to refinance. So Indicators that we looked at here were Black home ownership rates and Black households that were rent burdened. And so I'm going to start to the far right on this slide and work my way back. The cost burden renters that we see in Polk County, 53.3% compared to 39.2%. This means that this individual is spending more than 30% of their income towards rent or towards their housing. And, you know, the studies show us that 30% is that number that tells us whether or not we're living within our means. And for so many, it's impossible to live within their means because of the lack of access to affordable housing. And so this is a number that we definitely want to resolve, but more so than anything, Black people who rent their homes. This is absolutely something we have to pay attention to. 70% of Blacks rent their homes compared to 32.9%. Again, we know the value that home ownership has, and not only what it has for the present family, but what it has for future generations. And when we see, you know, less than 50% of a community renting their homes, we have to call the question, why is that? Not only does it affect the sustainability of that family and their ability to transfer wealth, but it also impacts their ability to gain in the present and get the benefits and the savings that being a homeowner offers. And then we look at the second graphic there, 2018 construction projects. When we outlined, okay, really trying to find where is our affordable housing, where can we push people to? We noticed the disparity that existed between market rate units, about 2,800 almost, compared to tax credit units, almost 300. An obvious disparity there as it relates to access to affordable housing. And then we look at the value of these homes. The people who actually do own homes, or perhaps they're renting a home in the urban core. Minority census tracts, the value of those homes, $95,600 compared to all census tracts in our county, $165,500. So that just gives you an idea of what our housing situation looks like. And then we look at the city of Des Moines and the structures that were built before 1970 metro area.
So I think Deidre has faded again. So this slide just really illustrates the number of structures in the urban core built before 1979, about 83%, and those that have been built since 1979, about 17%. And when you look at those numbers compared to the rest of Polk County, as well as the city of Des Moines, you see that the urban core needs a boost. We really need to focus our attention on the needs of the urban core as it relates to the built infrastructure and housing. So Deidre, if you want to go to the next slide, let's just talk a little bit why one economy, what we know, and why place matters. So this data really magnifies the racial disparities, and for all practical purposes, it reveals the urgent need to address policies and systems, especially those impacting individuals of African descent and those living in the urban core. The other thing that's really important is that while this particular work focuses solely on the needs of individuals of African descent, there is a high likelihood that the same economic disparities exist for the county's other ethnic minorities. I know that there is a report that is, and research that is underway relative to the Latinx community, but I think it's safe to say that for many of those communities, the same disparities exist as those for individuals of African descent. And then finally, it reminds us that as much as we want to celebrate the progress of our region, and we should, it also requires a deep examination of the racial disparities that exist. Let's talk a little bit again about the urban core if you want to go to the next slide. Again, the urban core is the most diverse section of Des Moines. This is where the largest percentage of individuals of African descent live. And it is those 10 neighborhoods that span sort of the central part of Des Moines. And really, a lot of individuals were pushed to this part of the city as a result of redlining and as a result of urban renewal as well. So as you can see, we've got a large concentration of individuals of color. And the reason why I point this up really has to do as much with ways that we begin to identify and invest in the urban core as it does the vitality of our overall community. So we did a little bit of research to really help us to align our work back with work that the City of Des Moines commissioned relative to the CZB report. It was interesting because the change in total assessed value in the urban core went from a negative 87% to a plus 14% based on the CZB research. There was 0 residential parcels with buildings assessed more than $100,000 in the urban core. The low values here correlate with the poor property conditions in the core. And the poverty is too high and too concentrated in the core for us to really figure out how we gain traction immediately, but certainly is something that requires our focus and attention. Strong households are not choosing Des Moines, and especially not the urban core. And then finally, the conditions of the urban core residential structures have the lowest rankings of all Des Moines neighborhoods. So if you go to the next slide, this is taken directly out of the CZB report, and it actually shows a ranking of each of the urban core neighborhoods. And as you can see, they are either in good to excellent condition at a diminishing rate across the 10 neighborhoods, or they are in slipping and bad condition, again, in escalating proportions as you go from the top of the sphere at Drake Park all the way down to the bottom at Capitol East. It really does, again, highlight the significant impact that disinvestment in the urban core is having on the people that live in the urban core, and does, in my opinion, require some level of focus that might be able to help us for the people. The next one, other things that I want to report. 19% of Blacks living in the urban core reported having to cut portions or skip meals due to lack of financial resources. 10.9% were diagnosed with diabetes. 35% are obese. 15.2% are experiencing poor mental health. 25% of adults have experienced 4 or more adverse childhood experiences known as ACEs. 13.3% of adults lack health insurance in the urban core, and they likely have in the urban core a greater number of individuals, households without a car, a greater number of individuals commuting on foot or using public transportation, limited sidewalks and lower pavement quality, limited new and affordable housing stock, and food deserts, childcare deserts, transit deserts, banking deserts, and employment deserts. So again, these are the data points that really begin to illuminate the challenges that we have in those 10 neighborhoods that we call the urban core. So finally, I'm just going to end with this. Place does indeed matter. So really beginning to think about ways that we lift up those 10 neighborhoods in the urban core will be key to helping people live, work, and play in a place where they have the ability to live. The choices that people make are really shaped by the choices that they have. Access to quality schools, access to affordable housing, access to health and quality food, access to safe neighborhoods, and access to financial resources and institutions. So place does matter. And we lift this up in our attempts to really shine a light, not only on the needs of the urban core, but ways that we can invest in the urban core in a way that allows us to increase livability, quality of life, and other opportunities for the children and families that live in the core. So I'm going to take you back to the 4 questions that we posed at the beginning. Why is this information critical to a discussion of the City Council? What does the data reveal about our city? Surprise. And finally, what decisions impact. So that concludes our formal presentation. More than happy to respond to any questions.
Terry, you're completely
Mayor
cutting
County, is
out
she
now.
breaking up again?
And we apologize for any technical difficulties.
If there are any questions, we could probably move on to that.
All right. Terry and Deidre, thank you so much for the work that you put in here and hopefully helping us align opportunity for equitably for all members of our community. Council, any questions regarding this presentation?
Well, I'll start. Terry and Deidre, thank you for the presentation and for the work you're doing. Do you have, in terms of, a lot of this is sort of laying out and identifying the problem and the disparities. Are there pieces or policy recommendations that you think the city should be focused on to address these issues?
Yes, Joshua. So the blueprint, which there is no active chat here, so we can email that out to whomever we need to email to get you all those recommendations. But the blueprint really outlines the recommendations that we believe can be helpful in decreasing the disparities that exist in the data, and it varies from sector to sector. For example, in unemployment, there is a notion about banning the box for folks who have been convicted of felons in their past and they've done their time. There's recommendations as it relates to housing. That's probably one where there's a lot of room for growth that can happen at the municipal level. And so that's another one that I would pay close attention to. And then, of course, as it relates to small businesses, it's really about building an infrastructure within our community. And what we've realized related to small businesses with everything that's happened over the course of this past 11 months is that the state of Iowa, not simply the city of Des Moines, the state of Iowa doesn't have the strongest infrastructure to support small businesses. And there's a great deal of work that's happening to make sure that happens. But this was an opportunity for us to see that, and the blueprint that the recommendations that occurred are actually being lived out that exists in the One Economy report. And so those are like the top line things that I can come up with you, that at least that I can connect the work of the city to. The presentation that Malcolm gave earlier about the city being connected and invested into the community, I think is very, very key. This data lives and it exists and it's real. But the more that we can stay connected to the community and engage the community in policy decisions and just in practices, how we deliver services from the city to the citizen, I think is going to help in the long run. Just maintaining that connection is very key.
Thank you. I think Joshua Barr's still on. Wasn't banning the box one of the bridging the gap recommendations as well?
And we have we call it a fair chance ordinance, where we look at it from an employment and housing perspective, making sure that people are considered fairly for employment opportunities, for housing opportunities before they dive in and start to check the background and look at them like they would anybody else, and consider that any other background issues as a part of ultimately whether or not the person gets the job, but don't discriminate or deny them the opportunity on the front end. So yes, that has been submitted, and hopefully we'll have an update for you all first quarter of next year.
Also, Deidre and Terry, if you would forward us the information, and either to clerk or to us individually, I think that would be important, that blueprint. So any other information that you have that you would like to share with us, please forward it. I see Connie, your hand's up.
Josh, do you have another question?
Well, I was just wanted to follow up. So are we expecting that the fair chance ordinance is going to be drafted so that the council can consider and adopt it in the first quarter? Or what's the process going to be there? I mean, I would love to have us pass an ordinance in the first quarter of this next year.
That would be my hope, Councilman. I can't answer that. There's a whole administrative part. I would need to talk with Scott, the city manager, and legal, see if there are any concerns. But definitely have something in an updated ordinance, which may or may not include that part, sometime next year. Get that before you all. But that is something that's definitely on the table, and that is something that's been submitted. So.
And then the other recommendation that I think it's important to highlight was around housing. And, you know, what our housing group really wanted to focus on was empowering the people who live within the urban core to take ownership of their properties in a number of ways. And so there are a great deal of recommendations on the table to help uplift the people who actually live in the urban core to be a part of the growth, rather than others coming in and strengthening the growth and reaping the benefits from it. And so that's a serious concern as we see the growth happening throughout the city of Des Moines, to ensure that Des Moines residents are actually being a part of that process rather than being subject to it.
All right, Connie, are you ready now?
Yeah, my question was more going back to the banking. I think it's, is that going to be in the blueprint too? The lack of banking opportunity, which leads to so many other things too. So what work has been done to try to get that corrected, to get more people involved in the financial system?
You know, it's that one, it takes an entire village. And I know the city of Des Moines commissioned the Bank On work that happened several years ago. That's continuing to happen, which is saying, you know, if an individual is being denied for a bank account, a checking account, a savings account, which is very, very common in the African American community, because there is, not to go in the weeds, there's another system outside of the credit system that basically looks at whether or not you're bankable. Well, if an individual is denied, they can, rather than turn to payday lending or any other alternative resources, they can go through an educational program. And then once they're done with that program, they can go back to that financial institution and get what they call a second chance account. One of the other things that we want to see improvements on, though, is not only the accessibility that's happening within the financial institution, because really only financial institutions paired with the pushing of municipalities and other stakeholders are going to make that difference. But that, as it relates to truly making a difference, is improving the access that an individual has with financial institutions. We talk about food deserts. We have banking deserts. where we'll see we'll see pawn shops, we'll see payday lenders, we'll see all types of other alternative forms for an individual to get some sort of economic connection to transfer funds or make purchases, but we won't see conventional financial institutions in those neighborhoods. And so one thing that the group recommended was that we get more financial institutions into the urban core so individuals have access to those institutions and can then build relationships with them.
Thank you. And thank you for your report.
Thank you, Connie. Councilwoman Connie, excuse me.
All right, are there any other questions? Josh, your hand's back up.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we know about the pandemic, or I think we know, is that it's exacerbating a lot of existing disparities. And I don't know if you have any data or thoughts on how the impact of the pandemic plays into what we've been talking about this morning.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Josh, that's a really valid point. However, I think the thing that's critically important about the pandemic is that you exactly hit the nail on the head. It exacerbated issues that were already in place. So even without the pandemic, everything that we've talked about today is an issue of disproportionality when it comes to communities of color. So, the pandemic just put an exclamation point on what we already knew. And so once we get out of this, we can't be back to business as usual, because we can't suggest that it was just as a result of the pandemic that these things happened. These things existed well before the pandemic even had its onset. So, when you go even to our 2017 report that laid out all of the disproportionate impacts across all 5 content areas, that was 3 years before the pandemic. So the issues are the issues, pandemic or no pandemic.
Thanks, Terry. Anybody else?
So, Mayor, should we forward the reports to the city clerk, or would you prefer that we send them to individuals? It doesn't matter to us. We can do it either way.
Terry, let's try both. Let's for sure get it to the clerk, but if you've got the appropriate addresses, or if you need them, we'll forward them to you so you can share it with everybody. Joshua, I see your hand up. Joshua Barr.
Mayor, just wanted to say that you and council members will be hearing more regarding the work of the Directors Council. If you recall, in September, a gentleman by the name of David Meeks presented to you all about unemployment challenges, and one of the directives was for the commission to work with organizations to determine what the city's role is in addressing unemployment challenges for marginalized communities. And so we are meeting with the Directors Council next month and a number of other organizations to have further discussions, understanding the city's roles in addressing unemployment challenges. So some of these things will come back, and we appreciate Terry and Deidre and other members of the Directors Council for being a part of that discussion as we move forward.
All right, and
Morning.
Joshua, thank you for all the work that you're doing with Civil and Human Rights Commission, and we look forward to additional conversation with the commission and seeing how we jointly can work together to continue to move these initiatives forward. And to Deidre and to Terry, thank you so much for your participation this morning. Scott, let me quickly ask you anything else that you want to mention this morning before we call it a morning and start preparing for a council meeting.
So Mayor, I too want to just give my appreciation to both Deidre and Terry and the commission generally, because the Bridging the Gap work works very well with some of these other initiatives throughout the One Economy and other groups and nonprofits trying to get to some of the same conclusions. So it's important that we keep the communication flowing and share with each other the goals that we're trying to aspire to. So again, thanks for all the hard work on this. We will continue to bring back these items and others as decision points are necessary, and frankly, just to keep everyone informed of how improvement is either being made or what additional efforts need to be put into these initiatives. So thank you for everyone's time. We do have the council meeting tonight. The next work session will not be until January 11th. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Any closing comments, council members? All right. Thank everybody, not only participants, but those that have been watching. Hopefully this was beneficial, and look forward to all of us working together to continue to make Des Moines a better place for all of our community. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you this evening for our regular city council meeting.